Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ted Xan Shadow Weeson from Brain Scratch Comms to discuss the recent reveal of a new Fire Emblem for the 3DS. So Ted, what was the first thought you had when the trailer started?
Right when the trailer started? Well, my thought was, does Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem finally come back from the dead? And no, that's not what happened. Not that a new Fire Emblem announcement of any sort isn't appreciated, but like, what happened to that game? It's been almost, I think it might have been like the day we're recording this, it might be exactly 2 years since we've heard anything official.
You know, you might be right, because it's been a while. We only got like a title card or something like that saying, hey, it exists, but then nothing. And I'm not sure what the heck happened to it. But yeah, that's the first thought I had too, because it was really good graphics. It looked like, as soon as you saw the Pegasus Knight, you were like, oh, okay, it's Fire Emblem. Awesome. Could this be Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem? And then I really thought that when the monster showed up with the Mouth of Truth mask from Rome. And I'm like, okay, this has to be it.
And then it cuts to the 3DS and you're like, nope. But yeah, the Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem trailer on Nintendo's YouTube page went up on January 23rd, 2013, so...
It's been 2 years, yeah.
It's been 2 years since that thing came out, and we know nothing about it. But, you know, that's a story for another day. Fire Emblem for 3DS, I think the Japanese title is Fire Emblem If, and I think the fan base is just calling it Fire Emblem 14. It really does look like an absolutely amazing game. Just, you know, the art direction, it looks like a massive step up from Awakening, and the fact that it can stand because they have feet. Yeah,
it was funny. It was like my eyes actually were drawn to their feet as soon as I saw gameplay, just because it was always such a weird tick. It didn't matter that much, but then it always kind of bugged me just because they just ended in stubs, and it was like, it looks just so weird, especially when everything else in that Awakening looked really good. But yeah, no, there is a pretty substantial, like, it doesn't seem like it at first glance, but there is a pretty substantial graphical increase to this game, especially when it comes to the transitions. I'm not sure if you watched my analysis of that yet.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, instead of going to black, it actually goes right into it. Everything seems to be placed exactly where it was on the map. Everything is, you know, in the correct fight. The character models look good, and there's no, like, loading for it. It just sort of happens, and I'm like, it's a really impressive effect, and it's amazing. This is the first time Fire Emblem has even come close to attempting something quite like that.
Yeah, definitely. It makes I like it in the sense that it makes the battles feel a lot more connected. Like, it's not like the characters aren't just battling in some completely separate space away from the fight. And like especially the scene on the bridge where you see the battles, like the two armies on either side, it does make it feel more like a larger fight than, you know, just like 10 or so people kind of whacking each other with swords. And it's not really an overstated kind of visual effect either. Like, it doesn't feel flashy. It just feels really, really, like, cool. And it's one of those things that I think will draw me into the action more, because I'm one of the people who will always leave the animations on when I play Fire Emblem.
Oh, I do too.
I know some people turn them off because they think they take too long, but I just, the animation in these games has always been very impressive. So
to me, it's sort of like the reward of the battle. Like, if you're just doing like the tactics thing, you might as well be playing chess, in my mind. To see the actual actions happen, you have that hope. It was like, okay, I can get a critical. Oh, I hope this works out. Oh, I might dodge, that kind of thing. You really do get more invested in the gameplay.
There's nothing more satisfying than seeing like the critical animation begin to start in one of the older games, or seeing like that little cut-in of the character's face in Awakening when they say one of several incredibly awesome critical quotes. Like the ones that always stick out in my mind are Frederick's "Pick a god and pray" and Muriel going "Be gone, foul miscreation." Like, they're all so awesome. If I can just have one hope for the characters in the new game is that they end up being as memorable a cast as they were in Awakening, because I love that game's cast of characters so much.
Yeah, actually, it brings up a good point. Is like, what is your experience with Fire Emblem? How many of the games have you played?
Well, my first Fire Emblem game was Fire Emblem on the GBA, which I believe is the 7th one. I never got too far in that because I was like 10 when it came out, and I'm not very good at those types of games. So I've never beaten Fire Emblem 7. I played Sacred Stones back when the Ambassador program was a thing. And I beat that. So that's, I think, where I really got interested in the series again. And, of course, Awakening came out, and that was a really hard game to find back when it was first being released. Like, you couldn't find a physical copy anywhere. But I love Awakening. If it isn't my favorite game on the 3DS, it's pretty close. It's definitely one of the best games to come out in the last 5 years for me. I've played that game to death, so I haven't had a chance to go back and try like a lot of the Japanese only Fire Emblem games, and I've wanted to play Path of Radiance for a long time now, but it's just so expensive.
I'm kind of similar in a way. Of course, probably like you, I got interested in the series because of Smash Brothers Melee. It's like, okay, who are these characters? And then a game finally comes out in that series. I'm like, okay, I'll check this out. And but I didn't check it out on the Game Boy Advance. Not the initial Fire Emblem. The first one I actually played was Path of Radiance. Which I fell in love with. It was just, it was a really fun game. I liked all the mechanics. The characters were fun, and I really got into it. And then I went to the Fire Emblem on Game Boy Advance to try out that game, and I only got as far as completing Lin's story. As soon as it shifted away from Lin, I sort of lost interest for whatever reason, and never actually beat it, and then I sort of skipped over Sacred Stones. I also got Radiant Dawn on the Wii, but that game is freaking hard. I mean, it is if you want to keep all your characters alive, which I always do in a Fire Emblem game.
You're not playing it right if you let them die.
Exactly, you got to restart. It would just kick my ass over and over and over again. I finally got through the first two sections of the game and got control of Ike again in that game. And then again, other stuff came up and I left it behind. And it's always a game I want to go back to and try again. But it's also kind of like very minor PTSD where like, oh god, I have to go through all that again just to experience it all and just get back up to that point. It's like, oh no. And then with Awakening, of course I got that, and I have played it multiple times up to a certain point. I still have not beaten Awakening, which is killing me because I want to play it. I want to have time to play it. It's just, Awakening came out during when I started doing board for GameXplain, and it just kept getting busier and busier and busier, and it just kind of fell to the wayside. And it's a game I need to play more of, especially now that this one's coming out, because I'm gonna have to do some more analysis. I'm gonna have to know a lot more about this series, so it's time for me to start giving myself a crash course in Fire Emblem and start playing a bunch of these games. There's a lot of rumors going around that this new Fire Emblem game will come out this year.
Iwata said summer in the Japanese Direct, depending on Nintendo's localization, because they can either be same day as with Pokemon, or they can be like 3 to 4 months later, like Kirby Triple Deluxe. And it doesn't even really seem to matter like what type of game it is, because again, Pokemon's a game that has tons of localization required, and Kirby Triple Deluxe is a game that has none. But that was still released like 3-4 months after the Japanese version.
I think it comes down a lot of the times to when they want to actually release it in the States. So I guess they could get it out in time. Would we want it for September, or would we want it and hopefully it does well there, or should it come out during the winter where it has a lot more competition, or is it better to come out at the same time as Awakening did, where it's just sort of February time, and potentially find an audience like Awakening did?
I've noticed that RPGs tend to do very well when released January, February, because that tends to be kind of a slow period where, everybody's pretty much finished the big holiday blockbusters and whatnot, so they've got a lot more free time on their hands. So, like, Awakening did massively well when it was released January, February of 2013, and Bravely Default also did very well, and it got a similar time slot. So I would not be surprised if the game got a US release around that time, although I would also not be surprised if Nintendo wanted to push it for a holiday release. So I guess it just depends on what how well they expect the game to do.
Yeah.
It could come out any time between the Japanese release and and I'd say early winter 2016. It's just we'd have to see more on that front.
Yeah, it's actually kind of impressive that they're so far along. It's how rare is it that we get an announcement of a game? It's like, hey, it's going to probably be ready very quickly this year too. It's like, oh, awesome.
Especially a game of this scale too. Like, they're using a modified version of the Awakening engine, so it's not like they had to build something from the ground up. But it's still an RPG. These games take an awful long time to make. Like most of the times from Nintendo, particularly when you see an announcement of a game that's going to come out within that year, it's usually something like a spin-off Mario game or something like that. It's not usually something this grand looking. I'm really excited that not only are we getting this game, but we're going to get it relatively soon. As much as the hype train can be fun, it's also exhausting to ride on that thing for so long.
Don't I know it? The game, as you said, is just looking really great, and there's a lot of possibilities to it. And, I guess I can even be pointed back to the fact that the game is called Fire Emblem If in Japan, which does imply, and even Iwata applied this in the U.S. presentation, that there will be a lot more choice in this game. And we've already pointed out the fact that there's going to be a player character once again, an avatar for the character. And fans have already pointed out like there's the female version can be seen. She's the one in the snow, which I just didn't pick up on. If you look closely, they're using the same sword, which is something I missed initially, and it's you rush, and you're bound to miss something. But I read the comments. I see what you guys say. But no, so there's got an avatar, and the whole big question with this one is it going to be possible to choose sides? Because we obviously have a more Eastern Japanese side influenced army, and then we have a much more European and Roman side inspired army. And like, will the avatar be able to choose which side he's on, or is it going to be some sort of story where you just sort of, go back and forth between them and just collect all of them, sort of like a standard Fire Emblem, but you sort of like maybe you're fighting both armies and for some reason, and you get to choose. You can only choose one to recruit a new member from, or something to that effect. I'm obviously not sure, but which would you like to see? Would you like to see it where you can have basically two playthroughs, one on this side, one on the other side?
To be honest, I think I'd be okay with either kind of scenario, because Fire Emblem has done some kind of experimentation with like picking sides and some sort of things. Like in Sacred Stones, there's a point where you branch the plot branches off for a handful of chapters, and you can either follow, I think her name is Erica, I don't know. Trying to pronounce Fire Emblem names is impossible. But there's Erica, I'm gonna go with that one, and Ephraim, yeah. I'm sorry if I'm like butchering these, but you can choose, they're the two lords of that game, and like Ephraim goes off and he does his thing for a bit, and Erica does her thing for a bit. So like for a handful of chapters, the party splits and you get different scenarios with each one. And I believe there's something similar with Hector's story in Fire Emblem 7. So, it's not an unheard of feature for the series to, you can choose early on whether you want to follow the Western Front or the Eastern Front. And also in Fire Emblem Awakening, they had some choices, some like moral choices at that point. Like the first one you see in the game is Emerin. You have to choose whether or not to sacrifice her or save her life. But the thing about that is that in Fire Emblem Awakening, almost all of these choices ended up impacting nothing in the game. Like the plot would continue no matter what. So I think that if you look at that game, the intelligence systems might have wanted to have more sort of like player choice impacting the world around you, but it's a lot harder to make a story like that. So if I had to guess, I think that it's probably more likely that the choices you make would probably impact how each army relates to you, as opposed to picking a side right at the beginning and sticking with them. Because I think, just going from the trailer, this is just pure speculation on my part, but I don't think we're supposed to really 100% side with either army in this game, because it's pretty clear that the dancing girl, at the very least, is very torn between the two. So I think there's some ambiguity as to which side's the right and wrong one. So if I had to guess, I think that you'd probably go along the game recruiting people from both sides and following your own agenda for the most part, which would probably be, if I know my video games, like trying to stop the war in general.
Yeah, that's the sense I got. I mean, it'd be really cool if you'd be able to choose a side, and maybe you'll be able to do that for a short period like those past Fire Emblem games. But it really does seem to be almost a four-sided war, where you got the Eastern Army, the Western Army, this Dark Knight Army, and then your own. And I think that's pretty cool. I really always loved the plot lines where you have multiple factions going against one another, and you realize that these two factions really shouldn't be fighting, but they have to fight anyway just because of the politics involved. I think that always creates some really interesting storylines and stuff like that. And I think it could be interesting if you do that sort of thing. Like, it seems like I had a thought that maybe the player character is brothers with Marks, the blonde guy that fights at the end of the trailer with the giant sword, and or the possible new Falchion, if it's the Falchion, or maybe just a new kind of sword. Who knows? But it's still there's a lot of dynamics that you can get from this game, and I think it's looking like to be a story that's very unique for Fire Emblem, but also really interesting because this is another one of those games where monsters show up for which is incredibly rare for a Fire Emblem game. Because you had like Beast Warriors in Path of Radiance, but those were sort of plot integral, and they sort of had their own sort of thing. You actually played as them. They weren't just random monsters you were fighting like a typical RPG, which I think Sacred Stones had that as well, didn't it?
Yeah, Sacred Stones had... I'm fuzzy on the plot details because it's been a while, but there were these monster-type things that were coming around, and you could... I remember that the tower that you could grind in had a lot of them. And I guess Awakening sort of had monsters, but the Risen were mostly just, like, zombie versions of normal units, so it's not really the same thing. You know, it's definitely not something like you get a giant stone golem with the mouth of a Roman artifact on it. That's for sure. But yeah, the story in this game does look to be, at the very least, a lot more morally ambiguous and complex than something we see in Awakening. And I mean, I love Awakening. This is not to knock against that game at all, but the plot in that game is relatively straightforward, time travel shenanigans notwithstanding. There's a bad guy, or a series of bad guys, and you beat them up because they're bad. Like, you know, there's, like, I've always found the support conversations and such to be one of the driving plots, like, one of the driving reasons to play the game more than the plot itself, necessarily, for Awakening. So, you know, I hope that if there's one thing that I hope that Fire Emblem keeps from Awakening, it's being able to support with as many units as you want, because I love those support conversations. If they go back to, I think in the older games, like, you could only get 3 per run or something like that.
They were limited in some way. I do remember that.
If they go back to limiting it, I'll be pretty disappointed, because I love, after every battle, seeing like 3 or 4 new support conversations pop up on the main menu. That was always a really great feeling when I was playing Awakening. So
yeah, I was curious about when they showed who the scenario writer for the game is, or who the writer is for the game. I forget exactly how involved he is, but basically the plot writer. I looked him up because I just like, okay, what's this guy's past works like? Can I get any kind of idea? And I looked at his body of work, and unfortunately I couldn't get a real sense of what they were like, because I never really heard of many of them. The only one that actually rung a bell was a series called Get Backers, which I've heard of, but I've never actually watched, so I'm not sure. So I couldn't get a real sense of what kind of plot lines he usually writes, but it seems like he has a pretty wide body of work. He's done a lot of writing, not just for manga and anime, but actual, you know, other television writing as well. So he has it seems like they've gotten a really good writer for this game, which might be a new focal point for them because of the relative complaints I have heard of other people's, like, the game is great, but the storyline is pretty standard, and that's about the biggest complaint I've heard about Awakening.
Yeah, like, they did make a pretty big deal about the writer that they got for the new game, and, you know, I was interested as well, but I'm kind of bad on keeping up with anime and manga, so I hadn't really heard of anything that he's done, but, you know, I'm gonna just assume that if they made such a big deal about this writer, that he's at least relatively popular in Japan. Like, it's promising at the very least. I guess it'd be kind of like if Nintendo said, we're making an Eternal Darkness sequel, and we got Stephen King to write it. Like, I'm not sure if like this writer is that acclaimed, but that's kind of like the closest comparison I can think of off the top of my head. And I'm glad that they got the same artist back, because I love Awakening's art style, particularly the character designs. Like they're all extremely striking and memorable to me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It looks like they've got a really good team on this. It doesn't even seem like the development of this game is being like impeded in any way by Intelligent Systems also making Codename Steam. So I'm guessing that these two teams must be mostly separate within Intelligent Systems. Because Codename Steam is coming out in March, I think, and this game is coming out in the summer, in Japan at least. So, they must have been working on both of these at the same time for the most part.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But yeah, in both games, I know a lot of people aren't really that excited for Codename Steam, but I am. I think it looks like a lot of fun.
Oh man, that game looks awesome. Like, you get to play as Abraham Lincoln and shoot aliens. Like what who wouldn't want to play that?
Yeah, exactly. It's such a shame that it's just not getting a lot of attention. But hopefully that changes. Maybe it'll be one of those things where it comes out and word of mouth is so good that people actually decide to pick it up. That'd be nice.
Yeah, well, to bring it back on topic, the Fire Emblem support I think is going to help that game immensely, because people really want the Fire Emblem amiibos because they're so rare. So, to bring, using the more, it's kind of odd to think that Fire Emblem is now one of Nintendo's most popular franchises, because people get excited about, people have gotten really excited about this new Fire Emblem game, and 10 years ago, like, people would have been like, oh, those guys from Smash Brothers, right? Just a few years can really change things.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I guess before we end this off, do you have any other hopes for the game?
Aside from an English release date, just more firm details about the story, I think, is what I'll really want. Because like the trailer does look very cool, but you can only really sort of guess at what's going on. Like you guys did a really great analysis, and I think you've uncovered about as much as you can from all of that. But just a little bit more, like just enough to get a firm sense of you're playing as this character, and just like you're just trying to see like which characters are initially aligned with which side and whatnot. That's really what I'm interested in the most, because I'm sure the gameplay is going to be just as fantastic as it always is. There's not usually too much different game per game, gameplay wise, in Fire Emblem. Like there's minor changes, but it's mostly in terms of like classes and things like that. So like I'm not expecting any major gameplay changes. So it's mostly the story that's got me the most intrigued at this point.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same way with that. The story is, I've always been a big fan of stories. So I'm always more intrigued in seeing what they could do with it or what they'll do with it. I'm almost positive that the gameplay is going to be fantastic. I mean, it's rare that a Fire Emblem game isn't fun to play at the very least. It has a very good basis for which to build from and try new things, and they're already it already seems like they're doing that. So my one big hope, and I have a feeling it's just not going to happen just because of the sheer size of the game, I really want there to be full voice acting for this game, because
that would be nice.
The voice acting in Awakening is fantastic. I mean, we only get snippets of it during like the critical hits or during the cutscenes at times, but it is really good, and I want to see these characters like the connection with them. I think would be increased so much. Because you got that voice, you got to in their head, you know what they're like, you know what they sound like, and it would be a lot of fun to see them, them have that much more interaction, and not just like a couple grunts and then a couple critical strike stuff, and if they're plot important, they get a few more lines than that. So I really hope there's full voice acting, but I kind of doubt there's going to be, because the game looks massive already. I'm not quite sure how they're going to squeeze in all that voice acting.
Well, you'd be surprised. Bravely Default managed to not have full English voice acting for every major line of dialogue in the game, like aside from random NPCs, but managed to also put in the Japanese voice cast as well. So the DS carts can hold more than you might think. I hope for, at least the main cutscenes and like story chapters that they have full voice acting, like especially if they do something similar to Awakening, where you can have so many alternate support conversation depending on who marries who and who has whose kid. Like, I can imagine support conversations not being voice acted, but at the very least for story chapters, I would love to have full voice acting. That would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be perfect. So Hopefully that'll be the case, but I guess we'll see. But alright guys, well I think that about covers it for our Fire Emblem discussion. I want to thank Ted for joining me today, and Ted, where can they find you at?
Well, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. I mostly do work with Brain Scratch Cons. We talk over video games and such. Yeah, we're doing a couple of games at the moment. We don't have anything Fire Emblem related up at the moment, but that might change sometime in the future. Hint, hint. So I hope you guys are looking forward to that.
Yep, so thank you guys for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain, and of course stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Fire Emblem and other things gaming too. Until next time guys, bye.